that's happening. And then we're going to...
That's needed, and maybe talk to Lou about a time and he had to go in rehab and other good stories like that. So, Primo, you got anything on top of your head you'd like to drop in today?
You know, it's percolating.
I know it is.
I am going to let it marinate a little bit while we investigate our friend Lou here.
Lou, why don't you start by telling us your sobriety date and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My sobriety date is 2/8/10. And I'm from Detroit.
Nice.
I'm actually a product of Detroit Public Schools.
Go Blue.
You know, I mean, came from a family that my family came from a Greek family. You know, parents were born here, but my grandparents were born in Greece. And I learned how to speak Greek before I learned how to speak English, which was very, you know, troublesome when you get him coming to school, you know, into a Detroit public school speaking broken English. So for me, it was, you know, it was difficult, but obviously, you know, I made it through. But my family, you know, was my dad was in the wholesale meat business. My mother worked for the Tankcom in Detroit for the government. So you know, I mean, I came from a pretty normal family, somewhat, you know.
Yeah.
And basically, I ended up, you know, starting to play hockey from the age of 4, and I played hockey all the way till I was 22 years old, and ended up, you know, quitting hockey, but and somehow through my times through, I ended up becoming a pretty good alcoholic.
It's a great place.
And of course, a drug addict, too.
It's a great foundation for all kind of drug and alcohol activities, the suburbs. Were you in the suburbs?
We moved to the suburbs late. We moved out of Detroit right after the riots in 67, 68. We actually moved out, I think, probably in 70.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the suburbs were more dangerous than the city.
Well,
of course, just the suburbs that I was from.
Yeah. Thanks to you and your whole family, your older brothers.
It was
of
corrupt,
crime.
man. Everybody was getting shit-faced. Everyone, if you weren't partying in Detroit, I mean, you were getting beat up.
Yeah, we moved to Warren, and Warren is a suburb just outside of Detroit.
Yep.
And you know, and my mother's family was actually, some of them lived there. There were school teachers and involved with that kind of stuff, and I ended up going to Centerline High School, and then that's where I ended up, you know, getting into. That's where I got into. Started drinking and drugging. Was in high school, and you know, it was typical stuff. You know, I ended up. You know, we started drinking beer. You know, stealing the neighbor's beer. You know, out of their sunroom, and you know, drinking their beer and making sure, you know, we all drank enough to throw up, you know, and be sick. And then, of course, everything's, you know, went into weed and, you know, other drugs started it, you know, from a young age. I mean, not really that young. I guess I was probably 14, 15 years old when I started smoking weed, you know.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah. So I was, you know, it was that kind of upbringing. But I mean, I came from a sort of a religious family. My parents were Greek Orthodox, and we were, you know, mother was a Sunday school teacher of 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, my dad was, you know, in the wholesale meat business. We ended up, you know, we'd go to church on Sundays, and I'd go to Sunday school. I was an altar boy and went to church camp and did all that stuff. And I was, and the truth is I did everything but burn a church,
Right.
But growing up like that, around that kind of lifestyle, I really rebelled against the Greek culture, it was really sort of hard to really get into it because I was, around Greeks my whole life. Greeks are one of those things, families, we have these huge families. I was the only child, but we had 100 cousins,
Right.
And that's basically how it worked. But, as I got older, I started channeling my energy into other stuff and got involved with drugs and, selling of drugs and all kinds of stuff like that. And, it sort of like came from a point where I started getting around my cousins and, that were a little older than me and then running around with them. And that was, how we got inserted into that.
It seems to me that hockey is a real beer-driven sport. I do have quite a few friends down here in Florida that play and coach hockey, and it just seems like every rink's got beer at it. It just feels like that is a sport that seems to be a pre to drinking. It's just a thing. Like you play hockey, you drink beer with the guys in the parking lot, or you drink in the whatever.
Yeah, it was, there was beer, as we got older, probably 16, 17, 18 years old. So when I turned 18, the drinking age was 18 for 3 months. And then it changed in October or maybe it was November to 19 the first year. And then it went, when I turned 19, I got to drink for 3 months because my birthday was in August. I got to drink for 3 months, and then it went to 21. But by that age, we all had fake ID,
right.
Or you go to Canada.
Yeah, Canada, you could go over there.
Yeah.
Then we used to drink in Canada. That was something over there.
And the real beer, the 6% or whatever the heck it was, everyone.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
But, hockey was one of those things that was such a big part of my life. I had scholarships, and I did, played all over Canada, and I played all over the state of Michigan and a few other states. But, I really thought, hockey was my life, and it came to a point in my life where I actually just quit. I was about 22 years old. I was playing junior hockey. I was pissed off at my dad, and one day I just quit. And really, my dad had no idea. My mom really had no idea, but I just didn't, I just was pissed. And, and as I got, once I got sober, I actually worked that into the steps. And when I did a 4-step, I did a 4-step on that. And that was really, it was an awakening to be able to see that my dad had no part of me quitting hockey. I was resentful at him, but I did it. I had to take responsibility for that. But when, from the time I was probably 18, 19 years old, and I really got involved with drugs, and drugs were the things that fueled me. I would drink, we would go out drinking, and I'd be one of those guys that would drink a bunch of Harvey Wallbangers and open up the refrigerator and see orange juice and puke it up, But with drugs, I could seem like I could hold my own, a little better. And it sort of was, it was an easier way for me. I've seen people, that come in were what we call real alcoholics in the program, and can be able to wake up in the morning and drink and keep drinking and being able to do that. And I was like, oh my God, I'd be like so sick. But I could use some type of pill or some type of powder that could keep me, that I would be able to function with.
Yeah.
And that's probably where where it started to go off the rails.
What was your preference?
More.
No, me too. But if I had money and I was spending it, what was I spending it on?
Well, it wasn't. It was. I was at a point in the late 70s and early 80s. I was in. Cocaine was everywhere.
Yeah.
Friends of mine went to Ferris State, and they all went to pharmacy school. Okay, yeah. So every drugstore in the area, my friends all worked at.
I hated the smell of cocaine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
Sorry,
it was,
you
but
know,
it was
I thought
always,
you were
it
gonna
was
say, I
always
loved
one
it,
of those things. I mean,
unfortunately.
and back then we had Quaaludes too, and that was the big thing. So we would use cocaine and Quaaludes and alcohol, and it, and it ran its course. I mean, it would, obviously cocaine always gets the best of you, but for me,
the second day.
I mean, it could have been a 6 day with me, I mean, it was like 6 days later. Oh, I need to stop. The party would start on a Thursday, and then somehow Monday would come around, and you'd go like, "What day is it?" You
Right.
know?
And you're crawling around the floor looking for crumbs.
No, it wasn't like that though. I wasn't quite there, but but I grew up around that. And one of the things that we were going to talk about is lifestyle, you know.
Yep.
And one of the biggest things was my lifestyle. I mean, I got involved with drugs and and different things. My family, my cousins and uncles were all involved with organized crime, and I sort of followed in their footsteps. My mother and father were regular people, had regular jobs. We had a great meat packing plant in the Eastern Market in Detroit. And I was sort of pissy at my dad. My dad didn't want me around my cousins, but guess what? As soon as you tell somebody, tell an alcoholic, don't stay away from those people,
right?
I'm going right
That's who
after
you called
them.
next.
And that was me. I mean, I went right at them. And then, when I say, involved with organized crime, I mean, they were when Hoffa disappeared, they came to their houses looking for him. Want to know,
Right.
Jimmy was there, and I was around them. They were 15, 20 years older than me, but I got around them and I got involved with all kinds of shit, and being thinking that I'm clever, and I have these all these connections. I used them to the best of my ability and got myself involved with a lot of stuff, and one of the things is that as it went on, I mean, the first probably 10 years or so, I didn't really get myself in any trouble. But once I got a little older and after, I started to find myself getting in more trouble. I never got busted really, for anything I had done. But I was, it was just the grace of God kept me out of prison,
right.
because my friends are either dead or in federal prison, underneath the jail. People that,
We're so old, our guys are getting out now.
Yeah.
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 Which is crazy to think.
It
Not,
really is.
not my guys.
No.
But that's what what it was. I mean, everyone is either most of my friends that were involved with that were either dead or
Right.
in prison.
That's the interesting part about this lifestyle, is that there's a lot of my friends growing up are I watched them die, or they got murdered, or you go away for a few years and get your life together, and you go back home. And I go back to the beach where I grew up. Nobody. Maybe one or two people are left. When I knew everybody on the island, like the whole island, you go back and there's just it's weird.
Yeah.
And that's the culture.
It really was. I looking back at it, I mean, it really we were before. They had satellites and all, they were tracking us and all that shit. We were getting away with, we lived right on the Detroit River, we were on the border there. Canada was very accessible to us. We were able to do a lot of different things. And, as the time went on, I mean, I was always looking for a new hostage because, I didn't have girlfriends or, friends. I had hostages. They would come, and be, in my home for years, days, weeks, whatever it was, and it was always that. And I never was comfortable being alone. I always had to have people. I mean, I had a home in Bloomfield Hills, and I had people there 24 hours. I mean, there was always at least one of my friends was either staying with me, or we had plenty of people over for parties, but it was always constant like that. And and I was never comfortable being alone, and I was an only child. I mean, it was sort of strange because I always had tons of friends.
Isn't that a Greek thing, though? Greeks are very tribal, man.
We're tribal,
like, yeah.
But and I mean, I did have a lot of Greek friends too, but I had a lot of you know, I mean, friends that I had met throughout the years, people, I mean, I did play golf back then. You know, when we played hockey, we were playing, you know, we'd practice in the morning, go to the golf course, and a lot of times we'd have games in the evening. We were never supposed to play golf, you know, but we would all sneak off and play golf. And they go, where were you guys? We're just out, you know, messing around. He goes, why you sunburned? You know, you know. But that was my life, most of it. But you know, the thing as it got older, you know, having these people around. I mean, it was, you know, a lot of the people who were in my home, I really didn't know that well. I didn't, you know, they were people hangers on because, of course, if you have the drugs,
Right.
you know, everybody's your friend. You know, if Osama bin Laden had the drugs, he'd be your friend too. You know,
Right. That's right.
I mean,
There was a large group of people following me around, and then at the end, I came back. Nobody.
Yeah.
You know.
So, you know, by 1987, 86, 87, I started to, I met a woman that was Greek from the same part of Greece my family's from. And she was around me, and I sort of was trying to at that point, I was trying to get myself backing away from all the other, you know, extracurricular stuff, trying to be legitimate. I'm, you know, got a real estate license. I become a broker, and I, you know, in Detroit. Started working and you know, was working in residential real estate in Bloomfield Hills, and then I decided, and I met a guy that was a commercial broker, and he had me come to his office, and I started leasing commercial real estate, and he introduced me and trained me in commercial real estate, and so I started doing that, but I was still always had that thing in the background that I always knew that I'd be okay, you know, and but I met a Greek woman, and she was from, her family was the same part of Greece I was from. So anyways, one thing led to another. But in Greek thoughts, we always think about, you know, we want to have a Greek child, we want to marry a Greek, blah, you know, it was one of those things. And so I did it, you know, I started, so we came, you know, and I was still dabbling in some stuff when I met her. So finally we end up, you know, we're getting ready to we're engaged, and I end up being, you know, I'm still partying and hanging, doing some stuff with my friends. So one day, I went out partying with my friends, and she can't get a hold of me, and she's got a key for the house, and she comes over, and I'm asleep in my bed. I've got, my nose is bleeding, and my pillow's covered in blood. She comes in, he fucking checks my pulse, but she calls my mom, and her and my mom go through my whole house, and they just go through, and they had guns and drugs and money, and they just took everything. I wake up, you know, probably sometime later that evening, and we're like, what the hell? You know, Jesus Christ, what happened? You know, everything's gone, you know, and I call him, she goes, hey, missing anything? Call my, you know, girlfriend, she goes, you missing anything?
Loves a
I
bitch.
go, holy shit. So I made an agreement to, you know, that I was going to go into rehab. And she made an agreement that I called my mom. She had given all the stuff to my mom. My mom lived in Warren, and I lived in Bloomfield. It was like 20 miles away. So she drove all the way over. She packed all this stuff in her car. So I had one of my guys go over to my parents' house. They go to my mom's and take all the stuff out of her car and take all the stuff. And I agreed to go to rehab. So, you know, back then we didn't have the internet. So I had to, you know, we had to figure out a way to go. But so I decided if I'm going to go to rehab, I got money, you know, so I'm going to go. And so I decided, well, where would I go to rehab? I've always gone to Hawaii. Most of my life, I spent probably, you know, 3 years in Hawaii, in and out of Hawaii. So I decided to go to a rehab in Hawaii because I'm so smart, you know.
Right.
I'm a genius.
You're a genius.
Yeah. So, anyways, the place is called Habilitat. First rehab, 1987. It's August. Seems like it'll be okay. So I go. I decide to go, and anyways, so we make arrangements. I fly over there. My girlfriend, she's got the money. She's going to send it over there. Once I get over there, and it's one of these behavioral training places at Habilitat, and it's actually owned by a guy named Vinny Marino. And there's a book out there about Habilitat. Vinny was a Gambino guy, okay, from New York that had a heroin problem, and they told him either get your shit together or get out of the state, you know. and get out, get out of here. And he got out and he opened up a rehab in Hawaii. And for me, I'm thinking like, well, I'm going to go 30 days. I'll clean myself up. I'll be good, Bubba. Everybody's happy with me. Everyone loves me again. Everyone's So I get over there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking, it's beautiful. It's on the ocean and, on the backside of Oahu, and, so everything's good. But after about 2 days, they started taking me through the process, and all of a sudden I find out that I didn't go to a 30-day rehab. I'm such a genius. It's an 18-month rehab. I got a home in Bloomfield Hills, a business, a dog, all kinds of shit going on, And I'm like, well, hey, Vinny, this is a great place. I love what you're doing. This is good, but I can't stay 18 months, And of course I, tell my fiance or girlfriend at the time, I tell her, hey, don't send the money. She goes, oh, you just want to leave. No, she sends the money. It's like $38,000, for the first month.
Wow.
And then they pay, and then you have to pay every month after. But it's not. It was like
still sounds like crime family situation to me.
So what he wanted you to do was, once you were there, after a month, you start working on these crews that he has, and he runs these crews that he has everyone working doing Riva Rock on the driveway, which is sparkly grit that they put on driveways in Hawaii so the cars don't slide. Well, sure shit, yeah, he's got 35, 40 guys working on these crews for 18 months, working for practically nothing to be able to stay there,
Wow.
And I told Vinny, I'm going like, that's great. I go, but if you want to cut me in on this, I'm interested. But I can't do it. No, you'll be fine, Lou. Don't worry about it. You'll be good. So they kept on and on with it, So it's one of these behavioral places. So first thing you do, I got long hair, right? They shave my head. Shave my head, tell me that I'm a punk, that I'm not, that I'm this and I'm that, and they break you down, and then they want to rebuild you. Well, it wasn't really good working for me. So I ended up, it was like probably 7 or 8 days into it. They're taking you back then they had to take you for blood work and AIDS tests and all that good shit, So they put us in a station wagon or something, and we start driving, and one side says, Honolulu, and one side says Kala something or other, bumfuck. So we end up, right there we stopped at the light. I said, hey guys, it's been real, but I'm out of here.
You jumped out?
Yeah, they went to grab me. But Lou, we love you. I'm going, yeah, okay, whatever. So I pull myself out of the car and jump out. So at this point, I go there and I got 2 suitcases full of, I'm thinking I'm going to Club Med or something. I got 2 Zero Halberton suitcases full of clothing, tropical wear and stuff like that. Yeah. They give me a tank top, a couple short pairs of shorts, and flip-flops and shaved head. So this is how I am right now. I have no hat on. It's blazing 85, 87 degrees, no clouds. And I'm standing there roadside with no money, no ID because they take your ID. So I got to go to a payphone at this point. So I go to a payphone and I immediately call my girl, I go, hey, this place is crazy. I go, I don't know if you sent the money or whatever, but I go, if there's any way to get it back. But I go, they want to keep me for 18 months, but you just want to get high. You just want to go use. I'm going, no, I just don't want to stay here for 18 months. I go, just send me some. She goes, hangs up on me immediately. So she calls my dad right away. Is she
Al-Anon?
Huh?
She Al-Anon?
No, she's crazy. Oh. No, so anyway.
She's a pissed off Greek woman, right?
Pissed off Greek woman. So I call my dad and she goes, oh, Cindy's already called. She goes, she said you left the rehab and you just want to go. You go, Dad, I go, this guy's he's mobbed out. I found out this other Riva Rock place down the road got blown up with a Laws rocket. I go, I'm out of here. I go, I told the guys, it's a nice place, but they want to keep me for 18 months. So my dad sends a car for me, calls the car service, sends a car for me, and sends me money to a Western Union. But I got to go back to this rehab and go beg for my ID. Now, they won't give me my suitcases back. They won't give me my clothes back. They give me, but they make me sign off on the cash that I gave them, the $38,000. They sign off on the cash, and they'll give me my driver's license so I can get on a plane.
Wow.
So I finally get over and get my driver's license back, got some money on me. I go to the airport and I fly back to, I buy myself a Panama Jack hat because, big Panama Jack hat because my head's completely burnt from being in the sun and I got no hair, So I end up going back. So I end up leaving and going back to Detroit, and I fly back, and I don't use. I look for another rehab, and I ended up going to a place called Williamsburg Recovery Center, which was up in northern Michigan by Traverse City.
A little more research into this one?
A little bit. 30 days. Yeah, so I go up there. And anyways, I stayed sober. I stayed sober for a year and a half. I didn't stay sober. I paused for a year and a half. And for me, I mean, that's the general rule, that I was not willing to change my lifestyle.
Right.
I was not willing to change my friends, places I hung out, or any of that stuff. That was the way I thought about things. But I was willing to stop using, and I could do it, So I will sort of bring this all in because, for me, it was 6 different times I stopped for a year and a half to 3.5 years. Wow. I paused, not working the steps. I went to some meetings, but I didn't relate. I was like, this book's archaic, and, how is this going to work today? So I would always keep trying to use some other way to get sober up. So I would think there would be some, a psychologist, psychiatrist, acupuncturist, hypnosis, of course, some pill, some kind of mood elevator or some kind of shit like that, or a Suboxone or some other kind of shit, that I thought that was going to work on me. But, I also use, like these roots that they come out with, the hallucinogens, all these things. I tried everything,
Who was it ruined by this time? The idea that you could just use like you used to after being in.
Well.
Was it damaged? The whole thought that you were kind of like going to be out.
I don't know why, but, throughout the years when I was using, on my birthdays, I would never use. And it was really weird because I was just like, I do this every day, So on my birthdays, I really didn't party on my birthdays, and except for maybe a couple here and there. But usually I would sort of be low key on my birthdays, and as I was pretty comfortable not using, but I wasn't comfortable with the things I was doing. The stuff that was going on in my life was troubling to me because, everyone said, oh, you can do this, you can do anything, you have ability to do this. I had high earning potentials in legitimate businesses and all kinds of different opportunities. I mean, and I would always revert back to my old lifestyle. It was like always I had a little parachute there because like, hey, if things are going slow this month, I can just do this, this, and this, and and I would take care of it. And it would always drag me back because I was always had this discomfort. This disease would always get
Is
me.
that calling your cousins or getting back into the drug game, or you knew you could make some fast money if you called your cousin so-and-so?
Or someone, or I couldn't leave you because you were my partner and I've taken care of you all this time, and you were, how can I, how is he going to pay his bills, or I got to do something, get involved with something because I got to, and use that as an excuse.
That hustle's a double-edged standard. Like, it's good and bad. I mean, once you utilize how to wield it, but the hustle is part of what really makes us successful, I think, in sobriety.
Well, yeah. I mean, in some ways. I mean, but it's changing. But see, what happens is once you get sober, you're able to focus on different things. And that was the thing. I got rid of all the crap.
Right.
Once I got rid of all that external noise, like I'm worried about you or this or guess and this, I was able to get sober. But
100%.
But the biggest thing is to be able to to acknowledge that, to identify, not stop comparing and identify. Because we're all alcoholics, we're all addicts. Doesn't matter what what you use or how much you used or what you did, but being able to get out of my own way, and that was the biggest thing. For me, it was being able to be able to stop focusing on what all the external stuff, because you can't fix an internal problem with an external solution. But getting onto it, I mean, I didn't have that gift of desperation for a long time. I mean, it took me 6 rehabs, 6 different times of stopping for, like I said, 1.5 to 3.5 years. The last time, 3.5 years, was the worst time of my life the obsession was never lifted. I was miserable, irritable, discontent, and I couldn't, really focus on anything because alcohol and drugs kept popping into my head. I was involved with all this other crap too, but that was always a thing. I mean, one of my best friends, my friend Lee, she's a therapist, and I went around her from the time I was 23 years old, trying to help me with different things throughout my life, and trying to figure out how I was going to negotiate, be able to do this other stuff, my side thing, and try to work my way into the thing, but I wasn't comfortable. So I went to see a psychologist, and she became friends of mine and me, and she had seen me for a long time and for a couple of years, and finally she said, Lou, she goes, I can't help you. Right. I go, what do you mean you can't help me? She goes, I can't help you. She goes, you're just a garden variety alcoholic drug addict. You need to go to AA. You need to go to a 12-step program. Because this is not going to ever change. You're not going to ever get better from me sitting here talking to me. I go, yeah, you may be able to figure some stuff out in your business life and personal life, but you're not going to ever get through these things that you need to. Oh, screw you. I'll get a better psychologist. I'll pay someone more money, I don't need, And she's one of my closest friends still today, and they're engaged to one of my best friend actually, and she, when I got sober, I finally got sober this last time in February 8th of 2010. In December of 17th of 2009, I lost my 21-and-a-half-year-old son to a heroin overdose. And that was my white light moment. That was the spiritual awakening. Everything all in one is like, oh, you've been drinking and smoking and snorting and popping pills and fucking and doing all these things, and you got your eye off the ball and you're this is what happens. So there was everything at that point came to a head. I had to look at what I've been doing in my life. With all this stuff that I thought was so important was not at this point.
Right.
And I came to a road in my life where I looked at it. I could go one of two directions. I had two directions I could go. One, I could go out the deep end and continue this path and go deeper and deeper into it and take myself out probably, or I could go into sobriety and see if I could try to do something and change my life and maybe help someone else that possibly could not have to deal with a situation like this. And I put myself in that position, and I just stopped, all my working of doing anything. And I went into finally I got myself in rehab probably within a month. And, I was trying to use, but the biggest thing about it is that nothing worked. Nothing worked. No matter what I did, I could use any drug. I could use cocaine, heroin, fucking every pill known to man, anything there was, hallucinogens. I was a pharmaceutical garbage can, and I just could not get anything. Nothing would work because I couldn't change this feeling. I couldn't change this thought. Yeah. And so I had to put myself in rehab. They kept me there for. I went to I'd been to a bunch of fancy ones, but I went to one that was Joe Blow, Eastwood Clinic in Detroit, and I ended up. I stayed there for like 28 or maybe 29 days. And back then they were still only keeping you for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at very most.
But at this moment, it doesn't matter what anybody says. Once you hit that moment where you're going to change and you're committed to it, to me, it was such an awakening that you're ready. You're ready, and you're just like nothing else matters. Like, 'cause that moment galvanized you, and it changed.
Yeah, I'm very, I can be stubborn in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
like I was stubborn. I wouldn't change, my lifestyle. I wouldn't change my friends. I wouldn't change my business. I wouldn't change these things. But at that point, I was locked down. Like I was going to do this. I had to try to
bring
do this a different way. And I'd been around enough people in AA and enough people that that had good lives. I just would not refuse to believe that this is why they had a good life. Yeah. Because I'm thinking like, oh my God, they have, they have this financial or
stuff.
They have stuff. Something's making them happy. It's not AA.
Right.
It's not spiritual. It's not a spiritual condition.
It's not sobriety.
It's not sobriety. It can't be that.
It's not a code of principles that they're living by.
No, of course not.
No.
So once I came to that realization that these people have good lives because they put their trust in God in the program, and all of a sudden I'm going, I wonder. And instead of hanging around with shitbirds like I used to, you know, people with the same amount of sobriety that I had, they were fucking as stupid as me. I found people with 20, 30 years of sobriety and started hanging around them. My buddy Bob, my buddy, I had, you know, Paul. I mean, I have so many friends that I, you know, and all these people surrounded me, you know. And, you know, and I was at the point, I wasn't working. I was sleeping on my buddy's couch, didn't have a home, didn't have anything, really. You know, I mean, I was like, just out there. I wasn't really you know, I just lost my mother a little bit before that.
Wow.
And I was at a point where nobody, you know, there was not that many people really cared what the fuck happened to me. I mean, I did have friends that were very close to me that they did care. But you know what? Most of the people, like my mom, my dad, a lot of my cousins and uncles and people that, you know, might have, you know, had a little more interest, you know, were gone. So I had to take responsibility for something for the first time in my life, because everyone would clean up my mess. I always had so many codependents and enablers that just did, you know, cleaned up my shit. Get me another attorney, bail me out of jail, you know, pay this guy off, do this, do that, you know, all that stuff, you know, until I had to take responsibility, because I didn't, you know, I like you say, you know, you don't have to take responsibility for your addiction, but you do have to take responsibility for your recovery.
Right.
Yeah.
That's that whole drop the rock. Like, you got all these irons in the fire, man, and you're keeping all these people around you. And when it's a freeing moment, when you just start doing the right thing, you don't need them. And you become you know, you can take care of yourself.
And it was really, so at that point, you know, and before I left that rehab, I did a 4th and 5th step.
There you go.
Okay. Immediately, because I would refuse to do a 4-step. And one of the reasons why I didn't use a 4-step is throughout the time I had been divorced from my ex-wife for probably 20 years at that point, you know, maybe almost 20 years. And she, you know, knew a little bit about the program, and she was around people, and she kept asking me, and she goes, have you done a 4-step? Have you done a 4-step?
It's annoying. It's so annoying.
And because and of course, because like every good alcoholic drug addict, she asked me, you know, kept asking me if I did a 4-step, and of course not. I would not do a 4-step because, you know, because of that. And, you know, when I finally did do a 4-step, it was freeing. I had that freedom. I freed myself from that thing with my dad. I freed myself with the thing with my ex-wife, freed myself with all the things that I've done throughout my life. I was able to get free of all that stuff and be able to focus on my sobriety. And what I did is that I would go to, you know, they tell you to do 90 meetings in 90 days. Right. I'm an overachiever. I mean, I probably did $180, you know, at least, maybe 200, you know, but and that's what I did, you know, and I kept going to meetings. And then I get sober. I'm sober probably 20 months, probably close to 20 months. And I, you know, and of course I call, you know, I'm at a friend's house and I call the police, and the police come, and next thing you know, they be ready to leave, and they ask me for my ID, and I hand them my ID, and I think nothing of it. I hand it to them, and they leave, and then they end up coming back, and they go, hey, I'm sorry, we're sorry to do this, but he goes, you have a warrant for your arrest for a probation violation from 2005.
Wow.
Now this is 2006 or it's 2010. It's probably 2011, you know, late 2011.
Right.
Sure as shit, you know, I end up going to jail. I did paid all the fines. I did all the things. I had one class I didn't do for this probation thing because I had been busted multiple times, and not for anything, just stupid shit, like going into a Meijer store, trying to return something, bitching out the store manager, and have 20 grams of cocaine and 3 grams of heroin in my pocket, and and looking like a lunatic. And end up, they come in. I had 4 possession charges. I have 5 felonies probably, all possessions, Nothing with any weight or anything like that.
Yeah. No intent to distribute or anything like that?
No. We was always just dumb shit, Arguing with a cop, arguing with someone in a store, getting pulled over, something stupid, It was.
But it's shit that we didn't clean up and finish.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
What happened was I didn't do this probation violation, so they put me in jail for 112 days or something. So I spent my 2nd anniversary in jail, in Oakland County Jail in Detroit, suburb, Yeah. And
OC.
Yeah, OCJ, and in romper room, what they call in adult daycare, but my friends that I was going to meetings with, they all found out I was there. They all sent me books and they sent me money. I mean, guys sent me like from my home group in Serenity Club in Waterford, Michigan. Guys sent me almost $1,000, for commissary stuff, all kinds of books. And then I was going to meetings there. It was crazy. I mean, these people, because I was going to a ton of meetings, and all of a sudden I disappeared, and they all found out where I was at, and they come visit me, and I was having extra meetings, and I ran into some people in there when I was there, and they knew me and knew my family. A lot of them knew my family. They'd hear my last name get called, and eventually I ran into this guy that his family owned one of the largest consulting accounting firms in the world. But so he got busted for drunk driving, and while I was there, he says, "Hey, I want to talk to you when you get out." So he was getting out maybe a week before I did. When I got out, I called him, and he says, "Hey," he goes, "this judge that I have in Bloomfield," she goes, "she's not playing." She goes, "She just put me in on a violation." She goes, "The next time," she says, "she's put me in for over a year." He says, "I need to stay sober. I need to go to the drug thing." He goes, will you move into our house? So I move into this house in Franklin, Michigan, Farmington Hills, Franklin area, and I move into this with this family, and I end up staying there, and I was calling in the morning, taking them to jams, which is if your color gets called, we at 5:30 in the morning, I call every morning. We'd go there and then do stuff during the day, and I go to a ton of meetings, and I did it for a couple 3 years. I did it. They lived in Naples, so they would only be. So I was stayed in a wing of a big home, and I did that for a couple years, and then all of a sudden I started to, I waited for opportunities. So it used to be whenever I'd stopped drinking and drugging, I would jump into something, because everybody would want me to get
like
do
a
something.
podcast.
Yeah,
like a podcast.
A podcast. That's a great idea. I want to start a podcast.
Yeah, skydive, something, But, it would always be, I would jump into something, and, it wasn't the right opportunity, but I waited and waited. And, and that was always one of those things. But being able to take my time, not have to worry about much other than, going to meetings and taking care of, helping with this buddy of mine, Frank. I mean, I had a pretty good idea, and as I saw opportunities come by me, I picked and chose what I would do, and I finally got into the right opportunity, and I got involved with it, and I did pretty well, But the biggest thing was I could never ever let my business or anything else get in front of my sobriety. Right. Put God in the program first, and everything else was secondary. And I mean, I still hang around with those people all those older guys that got me sober, and people that really, that I saw is people that had good lives and good families and good businesses. And
stick with the winners, baby.
Stick with the winners, because the ship. You can't soar like an eagle when you run with turkeys or something like that. I don't know.
Just sleep with dogs, you're gonna get fleas.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they say that we are the accumulation of the 5 people that we hang around the most. And if you think about the 5 people that you hang around the most, you want to be the average of them. So hopefully it's someone doing better than you, sober longer than you, better in business than you, whatever.
I gotta an upgrade then.
Well,
I'm just
you're hanging around us right now, so you're upgrading your own.
I know, I feel it. I can feel it.
But Lou, when you were saying you had to change your lifestyle, which we all have to come to that recollection, that we all have to realization, that we have to change our lifestyle. Did you make a conscious decision to drop friends? So in the last podcast, I shared that I came to a realization that all these people I was drinking and partying with were not my real friends. My wife didn't know their names. She didn't know who they were. So I had to make the decision. Well, they helped it too, because when I got sober, none of them called me anymore. Do you remember making a conscious, hey, I'm gonna,
Yeah. It was, there was, I had a girlfriend that was and she was not, she was trying to get sober, but she was always going back and forth, and she saw me after, she wanted to come around me after my son died and wanted me to, and I pushed, and I told her, hey, I can't do it. I have to take care of me. I can't be involved with this. I am going to meetings. I'm doing this. I'm changing my life, and I don't want anything involvement in this other stuff. And and she kept trying to. Told me that she's trying to get sober, and she's gonna take. I don't know. She took some kind of like a methadone or something like that, and she says. And I said to her, she told me what she was doing. I said, I still talk to her a little bit on the phone, but I said to her, I said, in the history of bad ideas, I go, this might be the worst one you've ever had.
Right.
And she died. She was dead 4 days later.
Oh,
Damn.
man.
Yeah. She mixed Xanax but I had tons of people die around me. I've seen, my closest friends that I played hockey with. I saw them die. All of this addiction, car accidents, overdoses, one thing after another. Multiple.
That's the struggle, man, as we walk over the bodies, and that's just the reality of living a sober life. But then we get to cling on to people that are getting new lives, and that's the other beauty of it.
Well, that is. And, being able to help others, being able to be of service in this program is a great gift.
Yeah.
Being able to, see people grow. And, I've been around Greg, and I've been around you, and I've watched Greg grow, and I've watched a lot of other people that I've seen come into the program, and it's in our heart today because we feel that as we see you grow, we see how life changing it is, and it's been really. I've had a lot of people die in the program too that I've seen been around 2, 3 years, 4 years, but die. And being able to, for me, one of the biggest things is that, for me, I went down to Naples. I was living down there in the winters, and then for about 9 years, and then I bought this place 5 years ago in Dunedin, and being in Dunedin is awesome because you got 730 meetings a week.
Right.
In Pinellas County.
Yeah.
You can't stay sober here, you're in trouble. I'm a lazy alcoholic, and I can stay sober here very easily, because I can bump into an AA meeting, going the wrong direction,
Yeah.
I go to, for me, I have, where I live, I have 30 meetings a day that I can walk or ride my bike to. Yeah. I have 7 in the morning. I have 5 in the morning that I can. At 7 a.m. I can go to.
Well, there's not a lot of brochures for rehabs in Youngstown, Ohio. Okay, but there's a gazillion for all over the coast of Florida. Rehabs are everywhere.
Yeah, they're.
And Lou, I have to tell you, your story is interesting because I think either sober or not, I think you were a driven person for success, and you were willing to do whatever it took on either side of that coin. Like you were a driven person and not everybody has that gift. You were, but to see that you were able to apply these principles and go straight, play it clean, and live this life with these codes and principles and see the huge difference. And now you get to make, like, our podcast, essentially, like, if we can help somebody doing this, that's the ultimate goal. we're going to yuck it up and do stupid shit, but, if I can help one person and then they help another person and he helps a person, and each person, who knows what the legacy would be 20, 30 years down the road, how many people those people are then helping. Are we perfect? No. But I love the energy of the way that you are able to carry that into sobriety and play straight.
It comes from the heart, because it's, I could give you, a million experiences of the mess, but the message is that sobriety works.
Yeah.
And it works if, but you have to put the work in. You have to work the steps. You have to get a sponsor. You have to be able to find a higher power other than yourself, because that is, that's the key. For me, I've had good sponsorship. I have great sponsorship. My girlfriend is in the program. She's sober. She's awesome, and she's able to really, put to words what a lot of times I can't even put to words, and which helps to be around people that are sober. That, it's a gift, and we attract people, because most of my life I chased money and women, and you know what? Once I got sober, they're chasing me.
Right, you got to stop chasing and
Stop
start
chasing
attracting.
and it starts coming to you, and it became,
We have to talk after this podcast.
No, it's not, but not like that. But but I'm saying, you look, you're chasing relationships. You know,
right.
You're chasing relationships. You want, you want something. But then all of a sudden you stop chasing, and all of a sudden you find these things come to you.
Well, it's healthy. The difference is that it's healthy now. Because I could do that when I had no problem doing both of those. Finance and romance when I was getting loaded, they just didn't work out very well. Now the success rate is amazing of how all that stuff comes to you. And it's...
You only have to
hopefully being married, you're
well, hey guys, no. I will tell you.
Correct that. A disclaimer.
I'll go on a polygraph right now, but me and my wife been together almost 8 years, completely loyal and faithful.
Of course.
And
because we found something that we never had before. It's called integrity.
Yes. Well, that
integrity and self-respect. Those two things you can't trade off for nothing. Once you get that, you ain't giving it up.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. And being responsible to and for somebody, when you get in the program and you get a sponsor and you get into groups and you get friends that are sober and you pull for them and they pull for you genuinely, then there's someone you don't want to let down. For many years, drinking and drugging, that you didn't care. Look, right. I know best. I'm going to do what I want to do. You're going to hang around me because I've got the whatever you're looking for. But once we get sober and we become thinking clearly, and there's someone that we are responsible to and responsible for, and someone that we don't want to let down, who could be almost a total stranger. Like, I'm 2.5 years in this program, but there's people in the program like you two that I don't want to let down. I would hate to go out on a binge just because, and I know you guys wouldn't judge me for it because you've been in the program.
I'd be really frustrated with you.
You'd be frustrated, whatever, but that's one reason why I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
My other, lifestyle change, right? My new lifestyle, new friends. I do have some old friends because I have lots of great friends, but there's a lot of the fringe friends that I don't have anymore, and that's because I don't give a damn about them or what they do or what they say, because they just were along for the ride to get wasted with me. And they didn't really care genuinely about me. If they did, they'd have checked on me.
Right.
Ain't nobody checked on me in 2.5 years, some of them. So anyway, I think that's a big part of it too, is you have a new group that you want to not let down, that you want to be a part of, that you want to have what they have. Lou, you're a great speaker and you speak at a lot of meetings in the area, and I know people, and I've gone to your speeches before. And it's great having you on here because you really translate and you get your point across, and we can feel it in your vibe how much you love it. And it's because, the both of you from outside of Detroit, you guys messed everything up. I messed everything up around here. It just so happens you both moved down here. I was already here messing stuff up.
It was a straight line south.
It's just go right down 75. And, it's a really wonderful thing to see the growth. And I certainly enjoy everything that I get out of it. And I had just like you said, there's no way I would have thought that this is what was going to work. There's no way I thought that this is why these people are happy, because they're sober and they're in a program and they're sober every day and every day gets better. But I now see it and now live it and now feel it. And instead of chasing things, which I chased my whole life, I had to stay busy. I had to have 3 jobs because I was always chasing. Now I sit back, try to just have a life, do good, be good, and listen to God, listen to my higher power. And next thing I know, I'm attracting some good things where, trying not to struggle. Don't struggle, right? Give my angst and my worry over to my higher power. Let life happen to me. And it seems to be going real well. I couldn't be happier. I'm thrilled about the whole thing. I love talking to old guys like
we're
you're not that much older than me.
What you're saying is that we find ourselves accountable today.
Right.
We have home groups. We have people that we see. Like, I go to meetings, all over the country, but really, in Florida area, I have multiple meetings that I pop into because I'm accountable. Yeah. If you haven't seen me for a while, I pop in and say hi. Because they're my friends, first of all, but secondly, that's how we do it. And we go to these meetings, and like all of a sudden it's a necessity to go to meetings, and then it becomes you want to go to meetings, and then it becomes a luxury to go to extra meetings.
It's a privilege.
Because it's a privilege. It's a luxury and a privilege because it's affecting our mental health, our spiritual condition.
You approached me at the warehouse and was like, "You're from Michigan, you know, you like what I shared," and he came up to me after the meeting and I'm like, you know, that to me is what I like to call equity or life equity. You know, each day that we put into this, every bit of work that we put into this deal, we get time and a half. We're paid time and a half.
Oh, yeah.
And it's as simple as that. I don't try to complicate this stuff with all this. Just suit up, show up, help somebody else, and that equity builds. And our life just gets better, better, and better. And I could see the conviction. I could feel it, man. It's like oozing out of your pores, man. This guy's like, he's like, yeah, man, I'm ready to.
It is.
Yeah, it's the next meeting. Like I fucking last night I was thinking about going to a meeting this morning. A little disappointed in the meeting this morning because whatever.
Because we weren't there.
That was part of it, but half the people left early. I'm like, half measures don't work, man. You know what I mean? You go to it, show up early and stay late, and that's the way I was taught. I like that black belt mentality. It's hardcore. It's been driven. I felt like it was almost a military experience for me when the guys that I ran with were like, hey man, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, do the steps, do this, do that, clean the ashtrays, you're calling your sponsor, what are you doing? Because if you're not doing, we know what's going to happen.
It's all about,
yeah.
It is accountability. You know, calling the sponsor, being of service. When you're asked to do something, you do it, being there for others. I mean, being, sponsoring and doing all those things that we've, that you do, that people before us did, and we keep doing. It's passing it on.
Well, those crowds that we came in and we ran into these crowds of people that we didn't know, and they loved us unconditionally, and they asked us how we were doing, and they followed up with, how are you doing the next time? Mm-hmm. And if you had a problem, that was the part that blew my mind. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Like this guy who was the doorman at the crack house in the hood, who I was deathly afraid of, was genuinely concerned of my well-being. Called me little brother. And this dude was like 6'5". I mean, he was a huge black dude from the hood. And he was looking down at me, and I'm like, we got nothing in common, man. Like, but the guy cared about me, man. And that was something that blew my freaking mind.
Here's the biggest thing. Here's what's the craziest part about the sobriety thing. For me, I could go, I walk into my first meeting, my palms are sweating, my heart's racing, people are laughing, I'm getting angry, and and fucking ready to not go down these steps, and I want to walk out. And then I walk in, and everybody wants to say hi, shake my hand, and hug me. What is wrong with these people?
Stop it.
But for me, I go to a dope house or a biker bar full of guns. My heart doesn't flutter. I don't even get excited. Nothing, no big deal. What is wrong with this? What is wrong with our thinking? I mean, you go back and start thinking about these things and go like, what could I possibly have been thinking?
What could we be scared of? I've heard you share that before, and I loved it. Is that I was terrified to walk in my first meeting, but for years I would walk in any other scary door, not worried about it.
You walk through these doors and
all the time.
It's a black door, and you just walk through it, and you don't have any clue what's on the other side.
Right. And this little innocent 12-step meeting, I'm terrified to walk into, like as if something bad could happen.
Oh, like and on top of it, God forbid if somebody knows us. Oh, we're worried about somebody else. Yeah, they don't care if we're drooling, our eyes are rolling in the back of our head. We never thought about that, but all of a sudden we walk into an AA meeting and we're concerned if somebody might see us.
I'm still worried about being cool.
So true.
For some reason, I don't know why, but but I am free. I'm free of all that shit. A lot of the shit, like I'm still working on a lot of things. You know what I mean? I'm still working.
You're constantly working. Yeah. I was my 14th anniversary. I got up in the morning and the first thing I thought of, I told my sponsor, I said, I got to work hard. My life's great. I said, I got to work harder.
Yeah.
And I do that every year. I started thinking about it when I get up on my anniversry. I got to work harder.
Recycle.
There is no complacency at all. Like they say, the closer if you're not working on your sobriety, you're working on your next drink. If you're not working on your recovery, you're getting, and it's a much easier to stay sober than it is to get sober. You guys have to admit
1,000%.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I went through 7 rehabs, so I get it. I was institutionalized with all these different places and trying to change, not ready. It's tough. But Here we are today.
Here we are today, and we're glad to be here. Listen, this is our third show, and what we like to do on these shows is we like to have a quote from a celebrity who is sober to try to bring them in to be regular people like the rest of us. And if you looked at our Facebook or our post this week, you'll see that we featured Mel Gibson. So I wanted to come up with a Mel Gibson quote today, and then we can make jokes about his movies or whatever you like. But here's what Mel said about sobriety. Mel says, "I am a member of a 12-step program, and I achieved sobriety like that. I've got 10 years of sobriety under my belt now. I've had other links before, like I had 8 years one time I fell off, 4 years one time I fell off, but it's like that. It was like going through a revolving door. Until I could take responsibility for myself and my own actions and the soberness that affected my family, I didn't know what I was doing. Thanks to the programs like AA and other ones, today I am a better and different man." Amen, Mel.
Braveheart, rocking
Right?
it. Braveheart, listen, when I watched his little clip this week, and I've been watching all these celebrity clips lately, he rocked my world. Like, what a powerful message, and he's definitely, these bottoms, we've seen them live. I mean, we got to watch these guys hit bottom in front of us, and we kind of laugh at them. I mean, especially Charlie Sheen a little bit, but, I mean, and I'm glad he's alive and sober. Like, that to me is going to be the awesome part, but Braveheart's the man.
Yeah. I like a lot of his movies, even the new ones. He's got a Christmas movie called Fat Man. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a good one. It came out like 5 or 6 years ago. It's like an alternate Christmas movie, right? Like he's Santa living on a farm, and he's a badass with a contract with the DOD to, somehow, I don't know, move missiles. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a really, really good movie. I enjoyed it a lot.
About, I mean, we're from Detroit. I mean, why shouldn't we use Kid Rock or somebody like that?
We'll use him next show.
Eminem.
He's not sober.
No, Eminem is sober.
Eminem is not fucking Kid Rock.
No, Kid Rock.
Wow, the kid's got to play. But you know what? He might not have a problem. I mean,
Okay.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
I don't listen. I mean, I try not to diagnose other people out of respect for what it takes. And if that cat can, if he's able to tap dance around this disease and get through life without having to do this, my hat's off to him.
I'm surprised you don't know Kid Rock, Lou, with all the musical people that you're in touch with.
No, I don't. I don't really know him. I know, people are involved with him, but I don't know him.
He dated Pamela Henderson.
I did see that. Did see them in Clarkston, Michigan.
See,
before.
I knew
but
there was something.
And all I thought about is, man, is she short?
Oh, is she? Oh, that's a bonus, I guess.
Well, listen, everybody. If you're having a tough time quitting, whatever it is that you need to quit, you're not alone. There's apps and numbers and groups in your town. So call us if you want and leave us a message, 727-294-4933. Hit us up on Facebook. Taking that first step into a room or a chat or a group with people just trying to get better, just like you, will be the best day of your life. It's been great having you, Lou. Is there something else that you'd like to put out there into the universe before we wrap this up? Any other words or wisdom that you want to drop on us?
Trust God, clean house, and help others.
Amen.
Amen, says my boy Primo. All right, well, thanks for listening to Sober Shenanigans, Real Talk and Real Recovery. Listen, worry, anxiety, and fear, it's all up in here. So give yourself a break. You're enough and you're doing great. I'm Stoff and he's Primo. And remember, no drinks today.
Oh, shit.